This week we're going to do a commission 4-bowl set for Joe. Joe is soon to be a new grandfather, and he thought it would be great if I could make a bowl set for his newborn grandson. All right, so the first thing we're going to do with this is cut this Boxelder burl to fit the bucket that we have. I could have used my circle cutting jig, but I figured that this was just as easy. The only difficult part was trying to cut off where the top part of the burl, where it was sticking through where the spikes are, that area right there. Then I proceeded to use a brass wire wheel to clean out whatever I could. As you can see, I had to do a lot of hand cleaning with this too because that crevice was just really, really deep. But these are the kind of pieces that we're looking for when we're doing this resin casting because the resin will penetrate deeply into the blank and hopefully we'll get kind of resin throughout the whole thing. And that's just a little pick tool. Anything you can use to get in there and clean that out will definitely benefit. I mean, you really don't want to have anything floating in the resin because it really will ruin the look of it. This week we're going to be using Deep Cast from Designer Epoxy. Again, this is another, you've got to use a deep casting epoxy if you're going to pour the amount of epoxy that I'm going to pour for this casting. I think in the end we end up having almost 4 liters of resin. So, I don't know what your resins are doing, but these ones are fantastic for these deep pours. There's the Blue Laguna. That's going to be the main color. And then the smaller cup you see there, that's just going to be the rainbow blue because I'm going to be using the rainbow blue as basically an accent color to go with the Blue Laguna. Don't forget to scrape them sidewalls and the bottom of your buckets. That way everything gets mixed up properly. Last thing is to put a weight on the piece and tape it down so that the wood doesn't float. All right, so what we're going to do is pour in the Blue Laguna, and then we're going to put this in the vacuum chamber for a couple of hours, and then let it set for about another hour, and then I'm going to take the rainbow blue and try and inject it down inside of this cavity that we have down in here. So hopefully we'll have, the majority of this will be the Blue Laguna with highlights of this rainbow blue in it. I have no idea if this is enough. I'm thinking that it's probably not. So we'll pour this and see what happens. Yeah, not even close. Good luck trying to figure out how much resin you need for these pours with these deep cavities, and there's just really no way around it. So I knew that I was going to need a full bucket, and then once I poured that, then you can judge maybe a little closer as to how much epoxy you're going to need. But like I said, in the end, I believe it's around 4 liters is what we end up using in this casting. There, that's almost the perfect amount. I know that this will drop off after we put it under a vacuum. So I'll probably try and mix some more up and put the bucket in with it so it's basically all the same time frame, and then dump it in after the level drops off. We'll see. I don't know if I can get this all in there or not. I'm always amazed at the amount of air that comes out of these castings. I mean, look at that. Now, of course, this Boxelder burl, you know, if it was fresh cut, there's no way that you would be getting this much air out of it. So, the great thing about this deep casting epoxy is that it's really thin. So, and it will sit basically for hours before it starts to cure up, and that will allow it to almost stabilize the wood. Not in the true sense, but it certainly will aid in that regard. All right, so I've been pulling a vacuum on this now for 40 minutes or so. So it's still at 27 inches of vacuum. So I'm going to leave this on for at least another hour, and then maybe even longer than that. Anyway, I'll bring it back when we're ready to inject the rainbow blue into this. All right, so this has been in here for 2 hours and getting ready to release the vacuum. I'm still holding pretty strong there at 27 inches. It's probably more like 26 inches of vacuum. All right, let's release the vacuum and we'll go from there. So since we have, there's going to be probably 4 liters of resin in here or more, I'm going to put this in the fridge like I did with the hollow form. And ideally, I would have this in the fridge, and then I would do the injection with the rainbow blue in the fridge, but you know, you guys aren't going to be able to see anything, so what's the point of that? And I just want to make a comment. You see how far that resin has dropped off? Even, you know, it's only been 5 minutes since I took it out of the vacuum chamber. All right, so let's get this loaded up, and then we'll inject this resin and get this in the fridge. And if you're wondering why I'm putting it in the fridge, I'm trying to slow down the curing process so that we don't get any thermal cracking. So that's the whole idea of putting this in the fridge. Last casting I put in the fridge for, I think it was 3 days. This one, I'm thinking I'm probably only going to do it for 2 and then put it in the pressure pot. So, I mean, you guys, you're not going to be able to really see what I'm doing here or what it's going to look like. But anyway, and I don't even know if this is going to work. I do know that when this goes into the fridge, this really kind of gels up and it doesn't really, well, it doesn't cure. So I'm hoping that the 2 colored resins are going to stay separate. And anyway, I don't know. We'll have to see. Try to go basically all the way down to the bottom and then slowly extract the syringe as the resin comes out. Now I didn't have enough room to put the resin in here that I was going to top this up with. I think it's going to be fine anyway. I'm going to dump it on this side because I really don't want a whole lot of turbulence over on this side. And I know that this is going to eat this and maybe even more. So all right, well, that's it. I'm going to put this in the fridge and I will give you updates as we go, and wish me luck. I'm going to need it. It's heavy. Well, this is kind of interesting. The last time that I put one of these in the fridge, the resin was really quite soft. This here, it's actually starting to set up. It's still sticky. You can still leave your fingerprint in it. But this is a lot harder or more cured than the last time I did one of these in the fridge. Looks like there's going to be some cool patterns in there. I'm just hoping that that rainbow blue stayed separate. If that did, then it's pretty much what I wanted. So what I'm going to do is just throw this in the pressure pot for a couple of days, and then I'm sure it will be good to turn. Just trying to push on the outside of the bucket here. I don't know. Very interesting. Must be because there's a bigger volume of resin, so that's probably why it cured. And I'm still hoping that there's not going to be thermal cracking, but I guess we'll find out in a couple days. Into the pressure pot she goes. All right, let's see if we can get this out. This has actually been over a week since I poured this, so it should be 100% fully cured. Didn't waste too much resin, that's pretty good. There it is. It'd be interesting to see if that dark blue is in here or not, the rainbow blue. I see there's a bit of it here. I guess we won't know until we get it mounted between centers. I'll grind that down a bit. If you're curious, that's a cut-saw grinding disc. I used to use a ton of those flap discs, and I'm telling you right now that that thing has saved me so much money, and I highly recommend getting one if you're doing any amount of work like this. As you can see, I've got the piece mounted between centers, and the majority of this turning is going to be done with the Hercules, like I usually like to do from Hunter Tool Systems. And I will remind people again that there is a link in the description for 10% off your next order. Use code INLAYGYM and you can get 10% off your order. This actually cut pretty nice. I was a little worried that I do find that when things come out of the pressure pot on day 3, the resin is a little easier to work with than, say, when it's fully cured. But regardless, the Hercules took care of this no problem at all. And yeah, it just really did a real good job eating up this resin. So I'm just trying to cut this back to expose all the wooden sides. And like I said earlier, we're going to do a 4-bowl set, so I'm going to be coring this as well. Throughout this video, you're going to see me kind of battling resin shavings hanging off the camera or dust on the lens. Certainly anybody that uh, films creative content for YouTube that works, on a lathe with these resin shavings will know exactly what I'm talking about. They almost seem to be electronically charged, and they really want to stick to everything, including your body. For those of you that have never been down this road. But I mean, the resin allows you to work with pieces that you ordinarily never would be able to work with. This Boxelder burl was well past its prime, and basically there was no way that you really would have been able to do anything with it, because by this stage it really was too soft to pretty much do anything with other than look at. So at this stage, I'm not 100% sure what's going to be top and what's going to be bottom. So I typically will clean off the top and bottom surface of the casting and then have a look at it and go from there. One of the issues with using buckets is that, of course, they're tapered. And I keep forgetting that my table saw, or sorry, my bandsaw, I can tilt the table on that slightly to compensate for that. And then that way in the future, hopefully we're not going to use as much resin. So there's kind of the first real look at what's going to be either the top or the bottom. I still haven't totally figured that out yet. So yeah, in the future, if I can remember to tilt the table, it's just one of those things. I've thought about this in the past, but I never do it. And anyway, hopefully that casting will fit in the bucket. I don't want it to fit in there super tight, because then you might trap some air pockets in there. But closer where I don't have to use any shims or anything in that regard would certainly be ideal. I'll just touch on safety here for a minute. Typically when I'm finished turning, I just wear sneakers, but you probably should be wearing steel toe boots. This casting, I don't know what it weighs, but it weighs a lot. And if it falls onto your foot from the height of that lathe, there's a good chance you're going to break something in your foot. So it's glue block time. I haven't shown this method before, but I just drilled the same size as that Phillips screwdriver and then drilled a hole through the block and then of course line everything up and that's it. I mean, it's a really good way to make sure that things are centered. Not really super crucial because that's a big blank and it all had to be whittled down. But if you're working with a smaller glue block, then of course you may need to do that method. So that's why I showed it. I still get a ton of questions about this hot melt glue and waste block method that I use, and that's great. Keep them coming. The glue is melted in an electric frying pan, and as you've seen when I stuck that on there, I don't spare any. I really put it on there heavy, and then that way I know that there's good adhesion. One thing that you should also do is make sure that you sand the area that you're going to stick the glue block on, and that way you're assured to have good adhesion, especially if you're sticking it to resin. Things to stay away from: softwoods, pine, spruce, fir, cedar. Stay away from all those types of woods if you want to use them as glue blocks. They cannot take the abuse that this hard maple glue block that I put on there can take. So if you're going to have a failure, there's probably a good chance that either you didn't get enough glue on there, the glue wasn't hot enough, or you used the wrong type of wood for the waste block. So now that we've determined that this is going to be the bottom, I typically will start on the corner like this, and then you'll see kind of the strokes with the Hercules will get longer and longer and longer as I blend that in and turn it into more of a bowl shape. I typically do not, since I plan on coring this piece, the outside bowl, I typically just do not shape the same as the knife set. To me, you lose a ton of volume off of the turning itself. Um, you can certainly tell me your thoughts on that, but the other three bowls will have the same profile, but the outside bowl I typically will leave as large as I can because that gives you more bang for your buck. But like I said, if somebody really insisted on having a nested set that all look the same, then I would whittle this down and try and match the profile from my knife set, and just to make everybody happy. But that is typically the way I do it. And you can see I'm starting to form a little bit of a foot because I like to have my bowls elevated slightly. So most of the bowls that I do, you'll see them with some sort of a foot on the very bottom of them. So on to coring. I didn't really talk about the setup. I've done this a number of times on the channel, and this video is pretty much 45 minutes long as it is without going into detail how to set this up. But the blank is so small that it's really, really tough to get any tailstock support. You can't really get it in there until the knife enters the wood. Now, the good thing about this type of turning instead of the green turning is that of course it's all dry and it typically doesn't clog up the cutter. We are using the Core Pro cutter from Hunter Tool Systems. So, that's really doing a great job eating this resin up. I mean, there's just no comparison with any other cutter for the one-way system as far as I'm concerned. So there you can see, like I couldn't use any tailstock support until the knife entered the wood, and then I even had to put in a tailstock extender, I believe, to try and even match that. So, it's not an ideal way to do things, but this is such a small blank, it's very hard to get tailstock support in there because of the size of it. just moving the support in there. There, finally, I can get that tailstock in there for some support. That little aluminum extension that you see on my live center that came from John Tully. Thanks again a lot for that. I really appreciate that. And there you go. There's the second one cut. There's our second little bowl. I'm still really surprised that a lot of wood turners are not using this method. If you look at the combination of the three bowls, they would probably have the same value as the large outside bowl. But all I'm saying is, you're really going to add a lot of value to your turnings, and you're going to put more money back in your pocket, especially if you're using a Corpro cutter for sure. And I get it. Like wood turning tools, there was a comment last week. People were like, "This is really an expensive hobby." Yeah, it is. It's not a cheap hobby to get into. You don't have to have the best tools when you first start off, and that's another thing that I recommend for a lot of new turners. Don't go out and buy thousands of dollars worth of tools and a $5,000 lathe until you know for sure exactly that you're this really appeals to you. I find that if you walk into most woodworking shops, most of them have a lathe, and if you look at it, it's off in the corner and there's stuff piled on top of it, and for the most part it's not used. So it's not for everybody. It really appealed to me right from the start. And I even after doing this for over 20 years, I still plan on upgrading my lathe at some point and my tooling. So it as my wife says, it just never ends, does it? Well, she's right. Maybe it does never end. I don't know. He who has the most tools when he dies wins. So there's our last core, and that's going to be a beautiful little bowl. And it would be a shame to see that just go to shavings. So I've got the bowls mounted on the coal jaws, and I'm just cutting in a flat area where I can stick a glue block on like I usually do. So, and then instead of just trying to turn that away, I just ground that little nub off. Why tempt fate? There's our first glue block on I believe this is the largest core. Just trying to get that centered on there so that we don't, I didn't have a ton of thickness to deal with here, so I had to be careful. There's a small little guy. Something that I ordinarily would never do, except for these bowl sets. So I don't know if you noticed or not, but during the coring of this piece, I didn't have any support. There was no steady rest. And I know that there's a lot of people out there that are fearful to try this method, but that's a fairly hefty blank, and it was done with just the glue block on the bottom of it with no steady rest support at all. So, as long as you use um, the proper glue and you get enough of it on there and the right glue block, waste block, then you should be fine. I should mention that the glue that I use does come from Canadian Tire here in Canada, and I buy it in bulk. So now we've got the outside of the bowl done. I move to the rim. I always start on the outside of the bowl first and then move to the rim and then start coring out the inside of this. And I'm just going to show the one big bowl. I'm not going to show all the other bowls because, well, this video is too long as it is. So you see, like I just kind of nibble away, nibble away. That is the most aggressive cut that you see there, where I'm using it like a gouge. So you're going to get a lot of chip out and tear out when you use it in that regard. But if you've got a lot of thickness, like that cut right there, if you've got a lot of thickness to get away quickly, that is the best way to do it. And then flip the Hercules back over on its side, and then take lighter cuts with it, and you'll get rid of all of that tear out and chip out. So as I ramble on, I'll just ask you guys if there's a specific topic that you would like for me to cover during the voiceover on these videos, then leave it down in the comments, and I'll do my best to accommodate that. Of course, as long as it's wood turning and maybe even tree related, then I'll be more than happy to talk about that. The knowledge that I have anyway. Getting a lot of requests on, basically how to make it in the wood turning world. And, I could probably talk for an hour on that. But anyway, just put your comments down below on a topic that you want me to cover, and we'll go from there. I will say that I was having a really tough time trying to cut the wood clean that you see down near the base. Not so much the burl area. You can see the spalted line, the darker wood. It just, again, this log sat for too long. I eventually get it cut clean enough that we're able to proceed to sanding, but it was a lot of really, really light cuts in order to make that happen. Finally, on to sanding. These are the 3.5-inch dimple discs from sandpaper.ca. And again, there is a link in the description for 10% off your next order. Just use code InlayJim at checkout. So on the majority of the pieces that I turn, I sand from 60 to 180, and then I stop and I look and see if there's any filling to be done. I don't really see the point in doing that prior to this. And there was about 3 or 4 spots on this main bowl that needed to be filled. And you'll see I'm just taking some of the dust and filling in any of those little areas. Then use the thin CA glue and then blend it all in and continue sanding to 800. This is the Triple E buffing compound, and it's from the Be All buffing system. So it does a good job taking out all those little fine scratches prior to putting any finish on. And the very last step before we put any finish on is to use the denatured alcohol. That way you clear away all that residue. I have Waterlux original VOC medium sheen here. Should be interesting to see how it brings this wood alive. Well, yet again, the blue Laguna and the rainbow blue does not disappoint. The pearl effect in that is crazy. Beautiful bowl. And well, the burl, just like the rest of that Boxelder burl, is pretty spectacular too. Wow. All right, this is going to take 3 coats for sure, maybe even 4. What I'll do is I'll just turn the other bowls and then I'll show you with the coat of finish on it because it's all the same. And yeah, we'll go from there. All right, well, there's the largest core. Pretty darn spectacular too, I must say. Really like this area back here. Ocean with burl islands in it. Very, very cool. Another area there. All right, number 3 coming up. Well, there's number 3. Nice little bowl. Better on the back side than it is on the front side. This one was a little bit softer, a little bit of soft areas right here. Other than that, I mean, again, a bowl with lots of character in it. Got the little guy coming up next. Well, there's the little guy. Probably only a couple inches across. I haven't measured it. But usually the very center of these projects that I do tend to not have any resin in them, so I thought that was kind of neat. So, I mean, it's just for fun. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for the second coat. So this is the largest core. And look at this burl right here. That is some pretty awesome stuff. Resin, fantastic. There's that little dark spot of blue right there. I don't know if the camera's gonna turn this towards it a bit. See right there? That was kind of what I was going for when I did the injection with the rainbow blue. Try and get that so that there, see it? So, I mean, that kind of, it's proof of concept. At least that works, especially when it goes in the fridge. Definitely going to need another coat, though. Next one coming up. There's another little beauty. Again, that burl up here on this side is crazy good. All right, smallest score coming up. There you go. Cute little bowl. All right, the main bowl's coming up. Doing things a little backwards here this week. So between coats, I buff with the triple E buffing compound, and then of course use denatured alcohol to clean the piece, and then proceed with another coat finish. And all four bowls were done in the same way. And there's our beauty bowl. Wow. Look at that. That is awesome. Pretty stuff. All right, so I will do the third coat the same way, and we'll see you when we're doing the bottoms. So here I'm using a 3/16 inch parting tool from Crown. The first one was the only one that gave me any trouble really, and I had to use a saw to cut it off the rest of the way. The rest of them come off quite easily. And of course, since we have the glue block on the bottom of the large bowl, we really can't use a parting tool on that. So it's mounted on my vacuum chuck, and here I'm just whittling away the waste block that was there and getting the bottom ready for the signature. I sanded the bottoms of the bowls to 320, 400 max. There wasn't really much for resin on the bottom of them, so that's why I didn't go any higher than that. And I even had to put my smallest one on a little adapter. All right, so as promised, this is the roughed out bowl giveaway. I've done my best to divvy them up evenly, and this is going to be pile number 1, and this is going to be pile number 2. So what I did was I put the names, the phrase bowl blank into the random YouTube comment picker, and for the first stack of bowls that you see here, David Wood, you are the winner. For the second part, for the second stack of bowls, Mind Pyrate, you are the winner of this stack of bowls. Congratulations to both of you. Send your details to spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will get your prizes mailed out to you. Thanks for commenting, and thanks for watching. Well, all right, let's have a last little look at this beautiful little bowl set. This resin is some of the nicest I've done, and the dark areas, of course, that's the rainbow blue, and it did exactly what I wanted it to do. It combined, but it stayed separate, if you know what I mean. So I'm really, really happy with that, and I certainly will be trying this technique in the future. The burl is pretty much amazing too. Awesome stuff. You've got pencil line spalting throughout the piece. Just a lot going on. And as you can see, there's no information on the very bottom of the bowls. And the reason for that is the baby hasn't been born yet, but I just got a message from Joe that his daughter is actually, or sorry, his daughter-in-law is in labor. So once I have all that details, I'll be able to put it on the bottom of the bowl. But by the time the baby's born, you know, by the time I get the video edited and uploaded, it's going to be too late. Yeah, once that happens, I'll put the information on the bottom of the bowl and I'll get it shipped out to its new owner. Beautiful little bowl. Should say this is actually 10 by 4.5. That's the size of this bowl. The largest core is 7.5 by 2.5. And these burl islands are pretty much the highlight of this piece. Very, very cool. Love that resin in there too. Again, you know, there's just a lot going on. Pencil line spalting. Just full of goodness. This burl up here is pretty amazing too. So yeah, it's a beauty bowl. The next largest one is, I've got this written down here, 5.5 by 1 3/4. And you know, again, you know, it's just, wow, very, very pretty piece. I will try to put some shots up at the end with it lit from above, and maybe we'll be able to see down through it. But I mean, it's, for the size, it's a beautiful little bowl too. Pencil line spalting, beautiful burl. Overall, a really nice piece. And last but not least, here's our little guy. 3 1/4 by 3/4 tall, and it also has resin in it. So a lot of times these cord sets, the smaller bowls typically don't have a lot of resin in them, but this case they certainly do, and even in the smallest little one. And if you're wondering what you would do with this, you know, you put some rings in it, earrings, whatever, put it beside your bedside table, and then of course when you get up in the morning, throw your rings on or whatever. I know most people probably sleep with their rings, but a lot of people probably don't. So that's what that would be good for. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, this piece here, it had some soft areas right here. So the foot isn't exactly round, but there was really no way around it. It was very difficult to sand and to try and keep round, and it's, I mean, when it's sitting on the table, you'd never know anyway. So, and that's the way most people will view this. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Very cool thing to make. This is kind of the first wood turning that I've made for a newborn. So it's cool. It's very neat. I've done all kinds of wedding bowls and retirement bowls and, you know, anniversary bowls, you name it. I've done a lot of them. But this is my first one for our grandchild. So thanks again for doing that, Joe, and congratulations to Mom and Dad, and of course the grandparents. You know, we've got 3 kids, my wife and I, and you know, we love them so much, and you'll have lots of great times in the future with them. All right, so I've got a really awesome set coming up next, or it's not a set, it's a holoform coming up next week, and it's made with something that I never thought that I would ever make anything with, and it is very, very colorful. So please come on back next week for that. It's way up there on the coolness scale. All right, well, that's it. Please leave a comment down below, because of course that's where we're going to get the winner of the 65,000 subscriber giveaway bowl. We're going to pick from the comments, so please leave a comment down below. And again, congratulations to mom and dad and everybody involved. And I guess that's it. Till next week, take care, stay safe. Don't forget that bell. And if you see it in your hearts, please share my videos on your social media platforms. See you next week.